Well, I thought it was time to redo my noise reduction tutorial. I get a lot of questions about this, mostly from wildlife photographers, and that's mostly what I'm talking to here. High ISOs, fast shutter speeds, low light, just noise reduction comes with all of it. So I've talked about noise reduction before, if and when I use third-party plugins. So I decided I was out shooting about a month ago, and I was able to record some video. It was low light. The light wasn't great, but it was still fun to be out there. And this reddish egret always puts on a show for us. Before you go jumping in and saying that, you know, I'm unsteady, it's spray and pray, just understand I've got this attached to the top of my camera so I can record what the camera's seeing. It's HDMI. And then my phone connects into it, and my phone becomes the screen. I shoot with a Sony A1 Mark II, 200/600 lens usually. But with Sony cameras, when you attach HDMI like that, it actually shuts off the viewfinder and the screen. And now I'm looking at it through the phone so I can record it. It's a good teaching tool. The problem is I gotta hold it out here. So this, it just gets really, really heavy to hold out in front of you, and that's why it looks so shaky in there. So forgive the shakiness, but I'm still able to capture some good photos, and I think it's a good teaching thing. It's called Atmos, ATMOS Ninja phone. Again, unless you're teaching it, I don't think most people would need it. But as this reddish egret's jumping around and it looks like it's floating in the air, I decided that this photo would be a good one to edit. Again, the light's a little bit low, ISOs start to climb up there. Bringing it over into edit, and then for, I'd say, at least 2/3 of my photos, I'm gonna use AI denoise in Adobe. It's great. When the ISO gets up there, when I have to crop in a lot, it's gonna make the noise appear worse, and the crop is also gonna make the resolution a little bit worse, so it's a little bit softer. I call that just a problem photo, okay? That's when it needs a little bit of image rescue. And at that point, Adobe's noise reduction sometimes makes it look a little too smooth, okay? For, again, my personal opinion on there, but sometimes makes it look a little too smooth, but that's only about 1/3 of the photos. The other 2/3 it works great on. So that's when I'll open up a plugin. Now, up until this point, I've always recommended Topaz. Come on here to the file menu, go down to plugin extras. You could see I've always said Topaz Photo AI. They changed it at the end of last year. It's now Topaz Photo, not Photo AI. And then the studio part of it is part of a bigger product that honestly 99% of you watching should avoid, because it's got a whole bunch of stuff in it that photographers don't need. So you would just be looking at Topaz Photo. All right, and when you go there, it opens up and it does some noise reduction by default. I add a little bit of sharpening to it. Sharpening is never going to make a blurry photo sharp. Even their super resolution stuff doesn't do that. It doesn't work like you think it's going to. You're never going to make a blurry photo sharp. It just adds sharpness on top of it. And Adobe's never really been great at sharpening to begin with. So I'll add a little bit of sharpness. Even my landscape and travel photos, if I've got a wide angle lens that looks a little soft around the edges, it does well. And then you can return that back to Lightroom. Just keep in mind, it will return back as a DNG file, and Adobe did away with the DNG file a while back, so you get to do all of your denoise if you're staying in Adobe on one file. Now, something's changed recently. If you go down here to the file menu, go under plugin extras, I've moved over to Topaz DxO PureRAW 5 is the version here. I like to click the preview option, but there are faster ways to do it because I just want to see it, and especially for this tutorial. Okay, so I'll come in here. I'll explain the shift to DxO in just a moment here, but we'll run through the settings. I'd choose under the algorithm, I just choose Deep Prime. There's a little question mark. You can read through all that stuff. The two main settings are going to be luminance, and let's set force details down here at 0. Luminance is the amount of noise reduction you're going to do. I find 40 to 50 works great. Just know the higher you go, the more noise you'll get rid of, but the smoother things will get. And then similar to the amount slider that we have in denoise in Adobe. Force details adds a little bit of sharpness and texture back in. Again, it's a push and pull. You go too high, almost looks like it starts adding artifacts and noise back into the photo. So you got to watch out. It does have this lens sharpness optimization, which is a little bit of sharpening. So you can go soft, standard, strong, hard, or custom, which essentially you're just moving this little adjustment slider there. So again, I'm zoomed in pretty far. I normally wouldn't necessarily zoom into 200, 300, 400%, but you can see it does add a little bit of texture back into the photo. A couple of other settings down here. These are things Lightroom does, but DxO does them well too. DxO's always been probably one of the top image quality plugins that have always existed. And then you hit process, and then that will return a DNG file back over into the Adobe world. So I'll show you in a minute how I finished the photo off. Real quick, talk about the shift. I always thought Topaz Photo was great. They had two separate apps years ago, Denoise and Sharpen. They were great. I didn't like opening two apps. They created Topaz Photo. I could do it all in one place. Great, kept using it. Topaz Photo got very, very bloated, but I was familiar, so I kept using it, and I always thought it did a good job. But it got bloated to where it does lighting corrections. Adobe's better. It does color corrections. Adobe's better. It does distraction removal. Adobe's better. It does some restoration things that maybe Adobe can't do, so if you need to restore photos, I suppose that'd be a place to go. It does image upsizing, which I always thought Adobe just Photoshop image size or just export it in Lightroom and upsize it to what you need. I never used it for that. I always did that in Adobe anyway. So it did get bloated, but I was familiar with it. I always thought it gave great results. Now, the interesting thing is whenever I talked about it, 50% of the people would agree and say, yes, love it. The other 50% would say, I prefer DxO PureRAW. I tried it. I thought it looked great too. Sometimes I thought it looked better than Topaz. Sometimes I thought it looked equal to Topaz. And for me, Topaz was what I felt familiar with. So that's why I continue to use it. They went subscription in at the end of last year. They have an annual price. It's too much money. They have an annual commitment, but you pay monthly. It's essentially an installment plan, and that's way too much money. And then they have a pay monthly with no commitment, and that is ridiculously too much money. So I can't, in good conscience, necessarily tell you to go out and pay that for noise reduction software when there's something for half the price that I think does really good, and 50% of you probably already use it and think it does better. But that's kind of how I moved over into DxO. They're offering, they gave my customers a discount. You can use the code MattK or MattK. I'll put it on the screen. It'll save you 15%. If you do use Topaz and you renewed your Topaz license and you're good with the subscription model, I've even got a little webpage that'll show you how to use it. If you're going to purchase it through there. It doesn't cost you anything. I get a little extra, but there is no discount codes for Topaz in there. So anyway, that's a little bit about the move over into DxO. But we'll jump back over to here. I'll show you how I finished it up. Up in the basic panel, I did the adaptive color profile. I did a pretty decent crop on the photo as well, just to straighten things out a little bit. Maybe even tilt it back that way. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. All right, these guys are they're fun to watch. They just hover. I just did a couple of basic panel adjustments, just some shadows, highlights, a little bit of contrast, a little bit of a color boost, a little bit of warming onto the photo in there. A little bit brighter, but that's pretty much it. I know some of you are watching this and you're like, well, do a detailed comparison, zoom into 800% and show me Adobe and Topaz and DxO all next to each other. I'm not that guy. I don't look at things that way, so I can't show them that way. They all have free trials where you can try it. So if you're that person, go ahead and zoom in and pixel peep. For me, it's all so close, it just becomes about what's either cheaper, easier, or more convenient to do. So I think that's important. Keep in mind, as I said, 2/3 of my photos don't even see that plugin. I'd rather avoid a plugin if possible. But if you are looking to do a little something extra with noise reduction and a little bit of extra sharpening, just know that this is my workflow now, and mainly because it's hard to recommend something that's gone subscription only like that for that price. All right, they went subscription only and it was $10 a month. If it was the same price I was paying, it's not bad. But to go subscription only at that price, I think is a little bit much. And then the shift away from just being noise reduction and sharpening, the shift away from that to really being a very bloated program with a lot of options inside of it, that's also turned me on or turned me off a little bit. So it gives you a little bit of history behind what I have there. So hopefully that helped out for those of you that are looking what the current modern workflow is for noise reduction. And if you enjoyed this tutorial, I do a lot of other landscape and wildlife tutorials. So this video will be a great place to go to next.